run Sarah.
Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Welcome to A Global Focus with guest L.A. Marzulli, author, researcher, and lecturer. L.A.'s website can be found at lamarzulli.net. L.A. Marzulli's latest book is The Cosmic Chess Match. Welcome, everyone. This is Tree Sheridan, host of A Global Focus with website at aglobalfocus.com. I can hope people in the room can... He has presented his exhaustive research at conferences and churches, as well as appearances and interviews on numerous national radio and television programs. Marzulli's latest work, The Cosmic Chess Match, was published this autumn and will be a discussion focus of tonight's program. L.A., thanks for being a return program guest this evening. Feel free to discuss any aspect of your research. I've read your latest book, The Cosmic Chess Match. Interesting read, and it'll be great to discuss it. Also, L.A., feel free to introduce any of the information regarding updates on the world situation and how those may be viewed in light of your research. Welcome to the show.
It. Yeah, thanks for having me here. Great to be here.
Thank you very much. And, boy, lots of very eager people here listening to the discussion. Now, L.A., of course, your work covers a wide spectrum of this field. Now, do you, also I just want to reference to our room, he has intensively researched this field. He also did once see a UFO, so he comes with a viewpoint that is mature and also some very interesting sources of research. Now, L.A., do you believe that the term Nephilim encompasses both a literal and spiritual meaning, that these Nephilim beings have both physical and spiritual forms, and that they're able to impact on our environment and time continuum?
That's a really great question, and it's one that we can't positively answer, but I will say this. I believe that the Nephilim were at one time, before the flood, physical creatures with bodies. They were demonically enhanced. One of the byproducts of this union between the fallen angels and the women of earth was, in fact, giantism. These creatures could have been as tall as 20, 25, even 30 feet, according to other researchers, particularly Steve Quayle, who postulates that they could have been as large as 36 feet. I'm more conservative, and so even if it's 20 feet, it's just way too big. And if it's demonically enhanced, in other words, if these aren't normal humans, yeah, they're giants, just plug in the Incredible Hulk here. That's kind of what you're looking at, in my opinion. We're not sure whether they had souls or not. We know that the judgment for any of this hybrid was the same in the flood and also afterward, which to me means that there were other incursions, and we see that through history. Other historians, for instance, Josephus, the first century Jewish historian, tells us that the Nephilim had bodies so large and a countenance so different, and their voices were like terrible to the hearing. I mean, this is, first century stuff. The bones of these Nephilim were openly on display in Jerusalem at the time of Josephus' writing, which of course is first century. Very interesting stuff. It's the reason why I bring this up is because all throughout history, and certainly the Cosmic Chess Match deals with this. We see move, counter-move, move, counter-move through these two players, for lack of a better word, players in the match. One, of course, is El Elyon, the Most High God. The other one is the fallen one, a fallen angel. They are not equally yoked. One is a created being. One apparently is not a created being. And yet this war has been continuing and ongoing in another dimension from time to time, spilling out into ours. I truly believe that we are seeing supernatural signs of this war, even as we speak. One, two, I believe this war is about to spill out into this dimension in all of its fury and deception. And we are seeing the sort of the avant-garde of that beginning to manifest now.
Boy, that's intriguing information. And, Ellie, I just wanted to mention as well, we already have several questions in the room, and one of our individuals in the room is a favorite researcher here. He's not an ICAR member, but a favorite researcher. But nonetheless, he's Mark. He's an historical and archaeological researcher, and with a website, Unusual Historic Places, at www.markancientsites.webs.com, and Mark is giving that Genesis reference. Very intriguing. Also, Rydell was wondering when the Nephilim are first mentioned, and what I think is interesting is not only that key reference, but now I hope I have this correctly remembered. You think that they're also mentioned in Judges and the Book of Job?
Well, they are. Let me put it this way: in the Book of Job, it talks about the sons of God, and that the reason why it's included in the Cosmic Chess Match is because it's translated, sons of God, is always the angels of heaven. I mean, that's what it is. There are other books outside of, let's say, the Tanakh and the scriptures of the Judeo-Christian Bible, which talk about the same thing. One of those, of course, is the Book of Enoch, found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. We certainly can appreciate its historicity. Enoch is also quoted many times throughout the different scriptures, which is sort of interesting. But Enoch also tells us that there was this incursion, that they came to earth and they were in fact the sons of God. It's basically the word Nephilim is only used two places in the Tanakh. One is in Genesis 6, the other is in Numbers 13. 33, the verse. And of course, this goes back thousands and thousands of years. Fascinating stuff.
Indeed it is. And of course, there is a full discussion now in the field regarding whether the these beings are truly extraterrestrials, or are they from other dimensions? Are they a combination of both? Are they a full spectrum of both? And just as an aside here, L.A., I will say this about the negative aspects of certain alien reports. Several years back, a researcher by phone from another country told me over the phone of his concern about young people committing suicide after having encounters with UFOs or these beings. It's a very anomalous, can be a very upsetting occurrence. And also, just within the last few months, within the last 4 or 5 months, I heard a presentation here in state from a great U.S. researcher who knows the connection with appearances by an alien craft, a probe in the Midwest, some years back, with almost all the parties except himself having died untimely deaths. To me, the nature of these anomalies can be overwhelming. Also, they suggest that in some cases there might be a possible intentionality factor. It might not be a good one.
Well, that opens up the door. It's a $64,000 question. When I was on Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, I was heavily censored. And what I mean by that is they have a managed agenda. And anyone who has a different paradigm or a different worldview is heavily censored. They interviewed me the first time for 3 hours, the second time for about 2 hours. You could hear a pin drop in the room at the end of the first time. I downloaded lots and lots of information to them. They chose not to use any of it, basically. I think I'm on in the first season for like 2 minutes, and the second season longer, but not much. And they asked me to come back for the third season, and I didn't do it. And from that came our Watchers series, which is our own DVD presentation. Watchers 3 is about to be released. We just got it back from the manufacturer. We'll start shipping those out tomorrow. But the bottom line is there are two schools of thought here. One is that all this is extraterrestrial, that these beings come from Zeta Reticuli or wherever, some vast reach of the universe. The other theory is that no, they're not interdimensional. They're not extraterrestrial. They are in fact interdimensional. I know Jacques Vallée at one time leaned towards that paradigm. That's the paradigm I embrace, and the reason for that is that we've got a thread of prophecy, ancient prophetic texts, which are highly, highly accurate. Not like Nostradamus, not like Edgar Cayce, that have 60 to 70% track record. These prophecies are 100% accurate 100% of the time. And then it begs the question, who or what is outside space-time as we know it and can actually call out the future with great specificity? And, there's different paradigms. Now, where people get my position confused is many people have what I would call religious baggage with them. So they look at what I'm saying, and because I'm quoting, let's say, from the Hebrew Scriptures or from the New Testament, the Christian Scriptures, which is both have the same thread of prophecy, goes through both of them, by the way. They will say, well, he's just arguing from a religious paradigm, or this is too religious, I want nothing to do with it. Well, what is religion? Religion is man-made for the most part. And what I mean by that, the people around, let's say, the figure that came 2,000 years ago, more specifically Yeshua, originally it was a good thing. Later on, it became an institution when the Romans made it the state religion, and from there it just went downhill. And we could trace the last 2,000 years, but it doesn't negate the experience of the early disciples, and it doesn't negate the revealer of those experiences, and it doesn't negate what happened 2,000 years ago, where he literally gave his life as a sacrifice, which opens up another 3-hour discussion, which we don't have time for. Maybe we'll touch into that. The bottom line is this. If it's extraterrestrial, then, I'm dealing with a gentleman I will speak to tomorrow who was very, very bizarre story, abducted over a period of time. He's got implants. He's seen reptilians, the whole deal, the whole 9 yards. And I'll be discussing this with him tomorrow and hopefully trying to get him free of this thing. And this is what I do. We get calls from all over of people who are seeing things, having abduction experiences, and what we tell them, we arm them and show them how to get out of it if they choose to. If they don't, If they don't want the help, then I can't do anything with it. But if they choose to believe what I'm saying and then begin to implement it, they do get free. And we've had people, scores of people, not only from myself but from other researchers who have applied the same techniques. I believe that these are interdimensional beings. I believe they are not extraterrestrial in any way. I think one of the dirty little secrets in the UFO community, which has been dutifully swept under the rug, is the human mutilation aspect, which of course is incredibly grisly. In other words, what they're doing to cattle, they're now doing to human beings. We've got one, maybe two cases that I can point to. One that happened in Brazil. The autopsy was done on this poor human being, and found out that these incisions and the stripping of flesh, the man was alive during most of the process. He didn't die till much later, which is now we're into torture. And, the excuse you get sort of from the other side of the aisle, the extraterrestrial hypothesis, well, we're like cattle to them. Well, I don't buy that. I don't, we're trying, or they're so far above us that they're dropping all of our worldview. In fact, what is evil and what is good, we throw all that out the window. I think it's interesting that most abductees are terrified, most, not all, but especially the first few of them. They're absolutely in a state of terror. Now, if these beings are so advanced, why don't they just knock them out? They're capable of knocking the partner out. We know that from countless abductees saying that they're being floated out of the room, and they look down and they see their mate, and their mate is completely oblivious to everything. He's been switched off. Why can't they switch off the person? No. These entities, in my opinion, thrive off the fear. They live off the fear. It gets them off, to use a sort of a crass vernacular term, but it does. The climate of these beings and what they move in is a paradigm of fear. Just think of the cattle mutilations. I mean, it's deliberate. They take a prize bull, let's say, castrate it, drain it of all its blood, take its sex organs out, strip the jaw from flesh, and then drop it back into the farmer's field. Why would they do that? Why would anybody do that? It's for one reason. It has a great effect. It startles the farmer. It creates a climate of absolute terror and fear, because anybody with a half a brain going, my God, if they're doing it to the cattle, what's next? Me? And that's how some of these guys are. I find it incredibly nefarious. Let me back up. Anyone who is taken, any child or an adult, is taken against their will, probed in a sexual manner, that goes against absolutely every law in every single country on this planet, pretty much throughout all cultures and throughout all time, for the most part. You just don't do stuff like that. So, when we look through that lens, it seems like these beings are highly malevolent. They're also engaged, as Dr. Jacobs and Dr. Roger Lear will tell you, in some sort of a breeding program, which, again, mirrors the Genesis 6 account. We have an interesting prophecy that sheds light on this. It's 2,000 years old. It basically says, it'll be like the days of Noah when the Son of Man returns. Well, that immediately begs the question, what differentiates the days of Noah from any other time in all of history? Which means you got to go back and you got to do your homework on Noah and what was going on. And what we find, there's one differentiation that sets Noah and the days of Noah from any other time in recorded history. And that is the presence of the Benaiah Elohim, the sons of God, the fallen ones coming down to earth. Interestingly, I'm desperately trying to get a hold of this person. And by some chance he's listening to this program. Please email me at la@lamarzulli.net, la@lamarzulli.net. He appeared on Brad Metzler's Decoded, specifically on the Spear of Destiny program. Now, I've been a follower of the Spear of Destiny and a student of the Spear of Destiny for about 31 years. I've never seen it, but I've done a lot of research on it. And at the end of this program with Decoded, Brad Metzler is standing and talking to this person. They're in some sort of a church setting, just the two of them, cameras rolling. And this man relates a story. He was a bodyguard, apparently. And the person he was bodyguarding apparently was an expatriated German, ex-Nazi, very, very wealthy. And according to the story, this man took the Spear of Longinus, the Spear of Destiny, before the end of World War II, and speared it out of Germany, replaced it with a replica. And as this bodyguard is talking to this other bodyguard, who's his master is talking to the expatriated Nazi, and so the two bodyguards are in a bar and they're just chatting with each other. And this guy tells him that, surely you must know, who you work for, type of thing. And then he spills the beans, and this is what he says, and this is what I'm desperately trying to track down. He says that this other bodyguard told him that these people, are the sons of the fallen ones, the B'nai Ha-Nephilim, the sons of the fallen ones, and that their goal is to rebuild the third temple in Jerusalem and have their man walk in with the Spear of Destiny and shed his own blood on the altar and then proclaim himself to be God. Now, this has all been prophesied for 2,000 years, but to hear it, now look, I can't vet this, but it was on Brad Meltzer's Decoded.
Yes, it was. I heard it.
Yeah, and I'm sure he has at least tried to vet what he could. Otherwise, he would never bring this guy on national television. So I find it chilling that we're hearing, that is so absolutely out in your face. Then we've got videos like Katy Perry, which once again blur the line of what is human. If you have not seen the Katy Perry video, E.T., you need to watch it. It is what I consider the coming great deception. It is promulgating what I would call the great lie, the alien gospel. At the end of the movie, Katy Perry is not human. She's actually a chimera, more specifically a fawn. When the robe is pulled back, we see the torso of a woman, but from the waist down, the legs of a fawn. This all goes back to Greek mythos. It goes back to Greek mythology, where there were centaurs and minotaurs and fauns and cyclopses. And it's interesting, Josephus, going back to our first century Jewish historian, tells us that the Greeks, these same Nephilim, were the legendary heroes that the Greeks called the Titans. There's a definite link here. And what are we looking at? We're looking at the offspring of the fallen angels. The gene tampering, the chimeras that were created during the time of the days of Noah are absolutely unprecedented. It's the reason for the flood. There's also another more pernicious reason, because an ancient prophecy was given, and it talked about the seed of the woman would come, the Messiah, And it says that he will crush your head, you will bruise his heel. That's what the prophecy states. And so the fallen one sees this. This is all in the Cosmic Chess Match. This whole chat, everything I'm talking about is in the Cosmic Chess Match. And the fallen one now hears that prophecy, and there's a very good reason why he's doing what he's doing. If he can contaminate the entire bloodline of the human race, that prophecy will never come true. El Elyon, the Most High God, is a liar, and it's checkmate. He's just won. The stakes are really high here, if I'm right in my assumptions and what I've written about in the Cosmic Chess Match. But that's the reason for the flood, and it's also, when you go back to the Genesis 6 passage and you look at what it states, it says Noah was pure in all his generations. In other books, I've dealt with that verse, so I'm not going to really, it's not in the Cosmic Chess Match. I will tip my hand a little bit here and say that one of the people that I quote from, Dr. M.R. DeHaan, basically says it's not saying that Noah was 100% right all the time. It was saying that his DNA, he was intact. It had not been polluted, not been compromised in any way. I find that fascinating. Jump forward to the modern day abduction phenomena, and there's a breeding program going on that mirrors Genesis 6. There's also implants, and I found this is the work of Dr. Roger Lear. When we interviewed him for our Watchers series, he's been on in all three of the series, Watchers 1, 2, and 3. Let me get a sip of water here. And recently, 6 months ago, I asked Dr. Lear, what's going on with these implants? what new information do you have? And he said, first of all, that they seem to be running at a clock speed of 300 gigahertz. This is also the work of Professor Howerlich, who looked at Dr. Roger Lear's work and postulated that these chips, these implants, whatever they are running at about 300 gigahertz speed, which is 100 times faster than the fastest computer we have on this planet, which runs at about 3.5 gigs. If that's true, these are supercomputers underneath the skin, embedded in a person. These implants have secretions around them. They're grayish. You can barely cut them with a scalpel, and most times you can't. When Dr. Lear took the 16th implant out, he took it to a machine shop and tried to cut it open with a diamond blade saw. Couldn't make a nick in it. They took the hardest file they had in the shop. Couldn't make a groove in it. He then took it to and this thing was cut in half with a laser beam. Inside are nanotubes, carbon nanotubes, not found in nature, and other things which we don't even know what they're doing. We have no idea what this thing is. When I asked him, Dr. Lear, what do you think this thing's doing? Without hesitation, well, I think it's changing the DNA. And I went, wow. And it got my wheels spinning, and I went back into prophecy. And it's very interesting. We know, and most people know what I'm talking about. We've heard 666 and the mark of the beast. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? But when you actually study that and do your homework on it and what the prophecies say, making it more complex, there's also something that is interesting to note, that there are sometimes prophecies which are there hidden in plain sight that no one thinks to overlay with another prophecy. You can have one prophecy written 500 years before another one, and the readers in the modern, no one thinks to overlay it, not realizing that there are two different views, but similar views of the same event. And so, with that idea in mind, with that concept in mind, I went into the book of Revelation, and it says basically this: you won't be able to buy, sell, or trade without this mark. 2,000 years ago, you see, that's an absolute absurd statement to make. What do you mean, buy, sell, or trade without this mark? What are you talking about? All over the globe? Give me a break. That's never going to happen. Even 30 years ago, that was an impossibility. Now, we've got prototypes like Digital Angel. We know it's there. We know the technology's there. There are those of us who believe we are on the verge, on the cusp of seeing this new world order come to pass, where I believe the entire populations will willingly get chipped. Here's why. In the days of Noah, it states that men and women's lifespan exceeded 500 years. That dynamic, incredible dynamic. Getting some echo. So with that in mind, if that's true, and I believe it is, that's one of the criteria for this time of the end that we're in, these end of days scenario that we're in. Hold that thought now. So you've got this chip, you can't buy, sell, or trade without it. But then a little further on, anyone who takes this mark within them, grievous sores break out. A little further on, anyone who takes this mark is immediately judged. What? For taking a mark, I'm judged? Well, what are you talking about? That doesn't seem fair. A little further on we read, and it's not related to the mark definitely, or not related to the mark in the sense that it doesn't say those with the mark, but it says this: men and women will seek death in those days and not find it. Here's what I propose in the Cosmic Chess Match. What if this little implant that Dr. Roger Lear has taken out from these people, what if this repairs the DNA? What if it will extend your lifespan 500 years, but it will change you and you will not be entirely human anymore? It will change you into Nephilim, as in the days of Noah, so it will be when the Son of Man returns. Fascinating.
It is fascinating, and it's a very well, but I do have to make some statements here, L.A. First of all, that theoretical concept that the Nephilim could develop an implant that would dramatically enhance our age, our longevity, and our well-being of physical health is not beyond the realm of probability. But Allie, I just want to be careful here. Experiencers have already suffered. I don't want people immediately to think, oh, they're all carrying this implant that automatically makes them Nephilim. I would say there's definite proof right now that they do not have such an implant. They do have, their implants have been reported, although Daryl Sims, does say that they aren't quite as prevalent as some would believe. Dr. Lear is a brilliant individual, but so is Daryl Sims and his team as well. Now, the point I'm trying to make here, L.A., is if these experiencers already had the particular implant that would flame, they would be enjoying tremendous health. And unfortunately, I've had dear researcher friends who lately have not experienced very good health. A dear friend of mine had to have major transfusions to save his life. Wow. And also, I too had a major 4 fractures in my foot. It's taken a while for them to heal. So even though I'm in pretty good shape for my age, I'm not a young chicken, and I'm definitely not enjoying tremendous benefits of youth. Definitely not. I'm older, and I'm showing it. Also, I want to just be very transparent here. I have been personally witness, L.A., to 4 occasions on which, when I used the name of the Creator, the ET situation that I was involved in immediately improved for me. But that being said, I am researching a group, the Tall Whites, who I think might represent a neutral group, representative of possibly a full spectrum out in the universe, some of whom might not be of negative intent. However, I think this idea that sometimes you can use Christ's name to help, I've seen it. I've had 2 researchers tell me that that's occurred to them. There could be a full spectrum, but I think your work is critical when people who are in situations with ETs where their human freedoms are being transgressed know that they can try this. They can at least try this. And by God, it's worth it if that situation is immediately improved for them. But, again, let's get back to the resting point. It's because people are here to listen to you, not me. L.A., we've got a question from a researcher, Goddess of Fire. She wants to know if you're familiar with the Sumerian text. I have a feeling you might want to reference Dr. Michael Heiser's work with that. He disagrees with Sitchin. Yeah. But it's interesting. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, here's the deal. We get these Sumerian tablets, and, Heiser challenged Zecharia Sitchin, but departed from this earth, to openly debate him. Heiser can read the ancient texts, and the translations, he believed that Zecharia Sitchin took great liberty with them. But it's funny, isn't it funny how, and I understand why people do this. Let me apologize to your audience, because I know that some of you out there have been deeply hurt by Christianity or religious institutions. On the behalf of all those institutions, I would ask your forgiveness, and I'm dead serious in this, for ruining your perception of what he is really like, because it's not more than likely what you've been shown. I promise you that. So I ask for your forgiveness, and I apologize on behalf of those who have hurt you. But it's interesting that this book, I call the scriptures the guidebook to the supernatural. Bible just means book, okay? What it really is a guidebook to the supernatural. For instance, and this is right in your backyard, trees, that if you deal with the whites, right, the tall whites, right, there's a way to test them. And but there's a way to test them, because you don't know what you're dealing with. And there's a way to test them, to find out whether they're good guys or bad guys. It's real simple. Most people don't know how to do that, and so there's no litmus test. And we're not equipped to deal with you know it, and when look, I've been involved in several deliverances, okay, where people are demonized or they got stuff in them that shouldn't be there. Let's just put it that way, all right? And it's sometimes there's screaming and yelling, not on my part, but on the person who's possessed, for lack of a better word. And I know my authority in Christ, and it's like, just shut up, Father. Take this thing out of this person and do it now. And I will say, by the blood of Yeshua. And that's usually when the shrieking starts. But the object is we get the person free. They become delivered from that unclean thing that was in them. We see it all over and over and over again. All this is found in the guidebook of the supernatural. It tells us how to engage, how not to engage, what to say, what not to say. It gives us paradigms in which to embrace. It tells us what real truth is. It tells us and warns us of the war in the heavenlies. It tells us not to engage in certain practices because we're not equipped to engage in those practices. It's amazing. The more I get into it, and the more I'm just absolutely astounded by it. And the more I look at it through the lens of a cosmic chess match, the more it makes sense to me. So again, I'm not talking about, religion. We're talking about real stuff that's happening on this planet. People are being abducted, they are being chipped, they are being implanted. And let me just break away for a second and go back to what these people that have been implanted, these are all prototypes. And that's why the ill health. That's why it's not working out well for them. And I agree with you, Trees. These are all prototypes. I don't know whether they've gotten it perfected yet or not. I have no idea to what, at what stage they will show up. But I theorize that when they do show up, they'll have two things that will absolutely gain our trust. One will be a free energy source. It'll take us off this ridiculous system of oil that we've been enslaved under since the Industrial Revolution. And that will dazzle everyone. It will certainly gain our trust. I watched the movie Thrive recently, and they sort of hinted at that. I know that Dr. Stephen Greer also is waiting for that, as other people are. They know that they've powers the craft. It's real, and it's a different source of energy. The next thing that they will do, I believe, would be to offer us this implant, which will extend our lifespan disease-free. At that point in time, that's when the game kicks in. So these people that have implants on this side of that are not Nephilim. I'm not saying that. They are prototypes, though. They're sort of like guinea pigs. It's a breeding experiment. I mean, it astounds me to think that this implant can be put into a person and can sit there, and the body will not expunge it. The body accepts it. It secretes some sort of a grayish substance around it that acts as a shield. I mean, it is absolutely beyond science fiction. It is, we're not in Kansas anymore. It's astounding. Something is going on. And this is why, look, if I'm wrong in this, it's going to, let me back up again. If there's, everybody can't be right here. Somebody's really, really wrong, and the deception that may promulgate on this planet and deceive millions of people may in fact be a great reality. If I'm right, that's what will happen. Only time will tell, Trees, who was right and who was wrong. It's just like, we're sort of like the world is flat. We're at the time of Columbus. There was only one Columbus, and, he thought the world was round. But the prevailing wisdom of the day thought the world was flat. It became self-evident after a while. The world's flat. We all know this stuff. We're at the same sort of point in history where things are going to change, and change rather quickly. Certainly when we look at the geopolitical and economic nonsense that's going on out there. This thing's like a powder keg ready to blow at any minute. I believe in a time of great crisis and fear is when this will trigger the supernatural, and that's when they will show up with these two wonderful gifts, free energy and a chip to extend the lifespan. This, again, I've called it, and I've been saying it for years, I call it the coming great deception. I coined that phrase in the second book of the Nephilim trilogy. I think it was published in 2002. It's not found in the guidebook of the supernatural, but it's something that, based on my research, I went, oh my gosh, this thing is coming. And it will deceive. Look, there's a prophecy, get this. Several prophecies taken and overlay them together. One is that men will faint from fear from what is coming on the earth. Men and women will faint from fear of the earth. That even the elect would be deceived, if that were possible. Unless those days were shortened, no flesh would survive. That the fallen one comes with all signs and lying wonders. So here's a whole rash of prophetic utterances that we have from 2,000 years ago a priori of the event that are warning us of precisely the type of thing that is forming out there. Let me close this little statement by saying this. For those of you who have not seen Ben Stein's movie Expelled, after the show, go to Netflix or go on YouTube and watch it. Actually, go to Netflix because Ben could use the money. So, but Stein sits down, and Expelled, the whole premise of the movie is, why is it that only Darwinism can be taught in our universities and schools and no other paradigm, no other worldview? Darwinism, at best, is a theory. And we can argue about that till the cows come home, but it's a theory. And Stein sits down with one of the premier evolutionists of the 20th and 21st centuries, Richard Dawkins, and he just poses a really simple question. Richard, where did life come from? And Dawkins has no answer. He said, well, I told you, no one knows. No one knows. Well, where did the first cell? Well, I told you that. No one knows where it came from. And he's sort of effete, sort of ticked off that his feet are being held to the fire. So Stein says, well, just give us an answer. Just tell us what you think. And this is what Dawkins' answer. Well, maybe millions of years ago in another galaxy, far, far away, there existed a race of extraterrestrials that created us and seeded the universe with life. And so Stein's eyebrow goes up and just goes, well, wait a minute, who created them? And of course, it's a chicken and the egg thing. It just goes on and on and on. No one knows. So if we're intellectually honest, no one knows how we got here. No one knows really where we are. We're stuck on this little blue planet in the middle of who the heck knows where, and we don't have any idea really how life began. We don't. We don't know how the single cell began. We don't know the complexity of the DNA or RNA, the first self-replicating cells. I mean, give me a break. Why does my arm only grow this far and then stop? Look at the variety of life on this planet. Of course, Darwinists are always honking their horn and telling us that, this is the amazing part of evolution over millions of years, and yet not one transitory animal. We know now, and I think if Darwin had known about the deoxyribonucleic double helix DNA spiral, he more than likely would have retracted his theory, because we see that one species does not become another. It replicates according to its kind over and over and over again, and that mutations in the DNA only serve in a very negative, detrimental way to the species. So all that being said, and I talk about this in the Cosmic Chess Match, in order to create a new paradigm, you must first undo the old paradigm that most people believe. This was done with Darwinism. Darwinism sets the stage, basically, that there is no supernatural, that there's only the empirical, only what we can see, touch, feel, taste, smell, all that. Here, that's the empirical, what I can reproduce in a laboratory. That's it. There is no supernatural. Doesn't exist. It's just, hard, cold evolution over millions of years, and here we are, okay? So what that does is that sets up, it chips away the existing paradigm of, let's say, Judeo-Christian worldview. It certainly has done that. In fact, it's usurped it. To the point now where when you ask Dawkins, he is actually, to get where I'm going with this, he's actually promulgating what I would call the coming great deception in the alien gospel. Without, any prompt, he just says, well, maybe millions of years ago, E.T. created us. And this is precisely what I'm warning against. Precisely. It's so obvious that this is what's going on. When they show up, they will be hailed as our creators, that they created all life on this planet, that they genetically manipulated early man, they started the world's civilizations, religions. Now at this critical juncture in human history, they, E.T., our creators, are back to usher the human race into a time of peace, prosperity, and knowledge. And this is what is coming. I'm not making this stuff up. It's coming. In some ways, it's already here. And I call it the coming great deception.
Well, those are powerful elements. Now, I want to go off the edge for a second. First of all, I want to name the people in the room. You're lovely. There's some good researchers in here, people great for whom I have great admiration. I just wanted to specify that it's not because I am more worthy that I think that I was able to get myself out of some bad situations there in an ET abduction scenario. It may be, and I've discussed this with other researchers in the field, I do believe in the power of Christ. I also believe in being assertive. And I would say a prayer. I'd call out for his name if I saw a tornado, if I saw a rattlesnake, or any other, and certainly a bear. certainly a bear. You people, I definitely would not say that I'm in any way more advanced or more worthy than you people are. I am not. But it's good to research all aspects of this field. I still think the tall whites are perhaps benevolent, or at least neutral. I tend towards the benevolent. But I do see where some of the arguments that they're making can be effective. And I appreciate that. I also personally believe in Christ, but I know that as a director here for ICAR, that we appreciate membership from people of all persuasions. Appreciate their viewpoints. I'm sure you do as well. And yes, I know, dear. I'm asking the person in the room, and I think you're probably a much finer person than I am. And I'll just say that at the recent conference, I asked one of our researchers, Melinda, on this, and she thinks it has to do with being extremely assertive. Sometimes I can be extremely assertive. I think that's a good thing. Other people don't, who happen to deal with me on a regular basis. But let's get back. Let's get back to some of these really good questions. We have about 8 more minutes until the first break. Now, L.A., you believe that current geopolitical developments, including those in the Middle East, are falling within the framework of a chess match. Tell us about this chess concept of yours, find in your book, and also the macro and micro. Interesting features as the Arab Spring. You're afraid that many of the governments there might turn to completely Sharia law. You also were mentioning as well the tremendous weather and
anomalies.
Earthquake. Yes, anomalies. Yes.
Look, well, you have to understand something that first of all, and I'll go back again to the guidebook, The Supernatural. There's a prophecy, okay? And it says, when you see these things, look up, because the end is near. I'm paraphrasing, all right? What things? Get this. Wars, rumors of wars, famines, pestilence, earthquakes in diverse places, and troublesome times. Okay. You see, most people read that and they go, well, that's interesting. Well, here's the rub, Treese, that there's no way to track any of that until the modern era. Absolutely. Case in point, you lived 300 years ago, and you were a trader in, let's say, London, England, and you had a base in Japan, and you wanted to go to your outpost in Japan. You'd hop on a sailing ship, sail down the Thames River, go down around Africa, and come back up, and eventually 3 or 4 months later, you'd wind up in Japan, if you were lucky. When you got there, to your absolute astonishment and horror, you realize that the entire port had been decimated, wiped out, that your building, which should have been there, is no longer there. And you search in the rubble, and you finally find, about a week later, a couple of survivors. You sit them down, and they tell you that something catastrophic happened. This enormous earthquake shook the ground and wiped out the town, followed by a devastating tsunami. You write all this down with a quill pen from a feather, a quill pen using India ink on parchment. You had them put an X on it, you roll up that parchment, put your seal on it, get back on your boat after you've restocked the provisions, and you start your 4-month journey back to England. Dock back to England after 4 months. You get the scroll, you hand it to the company boss. The company's boss gives it to the king, who reads it in court, and the information is disseminated slowly, mouth to mouth, person at a time. Well, that's my case in point, that there's no way to track any of this stuff to the modern era. Now we see the earthquake to Fukushima in Japan as it's happening, the helicopters over the tsunami coming in and photographing it. That's crazy. Absolutely unheard of. That's crazy. My laptop, my iPad, my desktop, all Apple products. I love that stuff. Anytime an earthquake over 6.0, bam, I'll get a ping. Here it is. Here's what's going on. No way to track any of these things. And Yeshua tells us that these are the birth pangs. When you see these things, understand it's not the beginning of sorrows. This is just the birth pangs, like a woman in labor. A woman in labor, those birth pangs happen quicker and quicker. It started in 2010. I went on the record on my blog, lamarzulli.wordpress.com, and talked about that. I said, something has shifted. We are now moving into a different time. It has increased. It is not going away. The earthquakes are happening on a global level. We can now track them. Yesterday in Los Angeles, where I'm from, where I live, we had 120-mile-an-hour winds, which knocked out power. That's unprecedented here. I've been in 90-mile-an-hour Santa Ana, but not 120 miles an hour. And entire trees were uprooted and all sorts of other crazy stuff. When we look at the earthquakes that happen on a global level, when we look at the seismic activity that the volcanologists are looking at, specifically around Katla, there was a story this morning which I posted on my blog talking about the Katla volcano in Iceland, which is the evil twin of the Eyjafjallajökull volcano. Eyjafjallajökull has erupted twice, once in 2011, once in 2010. In 2010, it actually closed the airspace for about 2 weeks over northern Europe. Katla is by far more devastating. Meanwhile, in Indonesia, we got Krakatoa. Remember when that baby erupted a couple of centuries ago, there was like a nuclear winter. Things didn't grow. If Katla blows, the same thing. And when Katla blows, you just don't get in the jets and start flying around. You can't, because that's where all the aircraft was grounded. There are little minuscule particles in the air which get sucked into the jet engines, and the planes will crash. You can't fly in volcanic ash. Just can't do it. It won't work. So, I asked the question, is it business as usual or something more? In Watchers 2, we asked this. Is it business? Watchers 2 is called Signs in the Heavens and Earth, and we get into all this stuff. Why is it that millions of fish and marine life are dying off all over the planet? Birds falling from the sky. What's happening with the lunar surface? Why is that seemingly rotated 135 degrees and not seen only here but all over the globe? Is it business as usual? Why is it that the Inuit, we get into this in Watchers 3, why is it that the Inuit people, Native Americans, okay, that live off the land, indigenous people, they've lived this way for who knows how long, probably millennia, okay? They are in tune with the earth. They when they go outside, they look at the sun, the stars, the wind, the moon, everything. It means something to them, not like us here in the West, where most of us are totally dead to those things because we're not living off the land. These people live off the land. You know what the Inuit say? Sun wrong, moon wrong, wind wrong, snowdrift wrong, everything's wrong. That's what they're saying. It's a huge, huge warning. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. It's not going away. When we look at the geopolitical economic crisis which is about to happen, when we look at the Federal Reserve, which has nothing to do with our government, which has printed trillions of dollars in bailout money, which we'll never be able to pay back, we've been removed off a gold standard. We look at the EU and we see the absolute chaos going on there. We see that Portugal and Spain and Greece and probably Ireland all downgraded, have horrible S&P ratings, and on it goes. We look at the famines in East Africa, thousands of people dying. You don't hear about that in America. Well, Kim Kardashian, or Charlie Sheen, right? That's what you hear about here. Kim Kardashian, Charlie Sheen, Wiener's Wiener, whatever latest stooge that they throw up to keep the masses distracted from what's going on. The Arab Spring, in my opinion, has a supernatural component to it. You're never going to hear anybody else tell you that, but I will. I've never heard anyone else on any other talk show, ever, anywhere. I'm sure I'm not the only person on the planet who believes that, because I've asked other people that do hold that to that view. The Arab Spring has a supernatural component to it. This just isn't happening. Millions of people just don't decide to wake up on a Monday morning and go, I don't like living here, let's revolt. Okay, what? What are we looking at? There's a supernatural component to it. On this show, but I truly believe, and I've written about it on the blog, that there is a huge supernatural component. What is the end results of that? Israel is surrounded by neighbors in any given period of time, in a 24-hour period of time. It has no idea who it is she's dealing with. No idea. Syria, just look at Bashar al-Assad. Okay, just look at him. What did he do? If we are sanctioned in any way, we will rain missiles down at Tel Aviv. What is Tel Aviv? What does Israel say? You rain missiles on Tel Aviv, we will destroy Damascus. Now, that might not mean anything to your listeners, but if you know the prophecy written 2,600 years ago that says Damascus will be a ruinous heap, that makes the hair on the back of your head stand up, because that's never happened. That prophecy has never yet been fulfilled. What about the Ezekiel 38 war, which lists a series of nations, and it says very specifically, in the latter days, in the end times, when Israel is dwelling in safety, a land without gates or bars. That criteria, in my opinion, has been fulfilled. Others disagree. It is a gates and bars. And you remember when this prophecy was written 2,600 years ago, in the ancient world, there was no such thing as a modern city. Every city had huge walls around it and gates. That's how you survived. If you didn't do that, roving hordes would come in and rape, kill the men, rape the women, and take the children. So you had to do it. With the advent of the airplane, all that became moot. Completely moot. So now we can just fly over, drop a bomb. You don't city anymore. That prophecy is fulfilled. A good friend of mine, Bill Salas, believes that the next prophetic event that we will see is a confederacy of Arab nations confront Israel, and Israel will wipe them out and expand its borders. That's a very strong possibility. Many people know more about, and I'm sure if I took a poll in your audience, most of your audience know about the 2012 prophecy. Okay? I talk about this in my book.
Yes, the Mayan prophecy. Absolutely. Right. And please pardon this interruption. We're about to automatically go into our break, but we'll be back in 8 minutes. What an interesting dialogue. And we'll be right back. Everyone, we'll see you at the other side of 8 minutes. Bye-bye. And keep on the line.
Rapid reading, psychic dream interpretations, and the gemstone of the week. And don't ask us a question that you don't want an answer to.
Give us 2 hours of your time to inform, enlighten, and entertain you. Let the journey begin.
Join us.
Light up your night with the Kevin Smith Show. Hey, this is Kevin Smith. Join me Monday through Friday right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Hello, everyone. Trish Sheridan, host of A Global Focus. Come join us each Friday evening at A Global Focus's new time, 9 to 11 p.m. Eastern. Come join the discussion.
To UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
Welcome back to A Global Focus with guest L.A. Marzulli, author, researcher, and lecturer. We are discussing, among other topics, L.A. Marzulli's latest book, The Cosmic Chess Match. L.A.'s website can be found at lamarzulli.net. We went to a very interesting discussion with author L.A. Marzulli, website lamarzulli.net, latest book, The Cosmic Chess Match. And before we resume our discussion, I just wanted to note here for my friends in the room, as most people know here, I am the Washington, D.C. director of ICAR. And I just wanted to give a quick summary of why I joined ICAR. I do believe I am an experiencer. In fact, I know it. And I had some very upsetting events occur particularly during a period near the time of my dad's death from metastatic cancer. I also was in law school. I remember at the time being very much helped by a Pastor Joe. At the same time, or close there too, another one of his, a person who we would know, but it was not Pastor Joe. Pastor Joe was very helpful. But another pastor from the same state really frightened me as far as my spiritual condition. And I actually, when I returned to law school, asked several priests and several Protestant ministers in the area, just, if everything was okay with me. They said yes. But it was very frightening. And at the time, I met people from ICAR, including a wonderful fellow by the name Jason from Texas, our ICAR director there. He was extremely, and by God, I kept up at school, kept my scholarship, and I thank you for your help, Instant. And I think you're a wonderful example of the excellent researchers at ICAR. And, like your group, at LA, we try to address the questions and concerns of experiencers who contact us. The full spectrum of the field needs to be researched. And I think you would agree with me that cooperation, education, and dialogue are so important. This is such an important subject. And it sounds to me as though LA, your group is really approaching the experiencers too in a very professional and responsible manner. Good for you. Now, Jason, our Texas director, has a great question. If I could just quickly note two of the interesting segments on your book, particularly with, actually the entire book, Cosmic Chess Match, is interesting, but I find a particular note to the developments in Israel and the controversy over the Temple Mount. Of course, one wonders, will the Third Temple be rebuilt? Mm-hmm. Now, here's the question from Instant, our Texas State Director for ICAR. And Instant's question is this. L.A. Jason has some very Christian neighbors on his block. Several years ago, they sold their house and all their possessions to become missionaries and save as much as they could before the end, or the end time. The prophecy they mentioned concerned it must be a theoretical future attack on Israel. Of course, this is theoretical. The way they framed it, it was that someone would attempt to nuke Israel, which would be defended by, quote, beams of light from heaven, end quote. And after that point, Armageddon would occur 7 years later. Jason doesn't recall where in the Bible that came from, but he thinks you might know the reference. He's not sure. He also wonders where they got that idea from, but he's mentioning they believed these concepts so seriously that they decided to drop their current lives in preparation for it.
Oh, that's very interesting, and obviously it was not an easy decision or a capricious one. They probably gave it great thought and decided that if we really are in this window of time, what can be more important than warning people of the coming catastrophe about to hit planet Earth? The place you want to read, and I would challenge your readers to read this tonight after the show, is Ezekiel, the prophet Ezekiel, found in the Tanakh. The Tanakh is what we call the Old Testament. It's a 2,600-year-old passage. Ezekiel 38, chapter 38. Now remember, originally there were no chapter delineations in these scriptures. They were just written, from right to left, and you would unroll the scroll, and that's what you would do. Use your finger. Now we've done that. It's basically like street signs. You go down Elm Street, you go down 3 blocks, you make a right, and you come to Ezekiel 38. That's what it is. There's nothing religious about it. Although there are many people that like to quote that, and they sound, in my opinion, they sort of sound silly. They're just trying to impress people with the fact that they can quote where this stuff is from. It's information is what it is. It's prophecy, prophetic information, which I think is very important for the days in which we live in. So when I tell you Ezekiel, that's the guy who wrote it. 38, that's the chapter just of a book. And you go there and you read it, 38 and 39, and your jaw will be on the ground. It also lists the nations, unlike Nostradamus, that, with all due respect to Nostradamians, that can't seem to get history from Hitler. These prophecies list the nations by name, right there. and it says these nations will come up against a land of unwalled villages, which I talked about before the break. The whole concept of a land of unwalled villages was unheard of 2,600 years ago. Now we see that this is the status quo, that there's no need to build walls because you can, you fly over the city and bomb it, so the wall's not going to keep an airplane out. So go to Ezekiel 38, 39 and check that out for yourself. And yes, what we're seeing, in my opinion, is the stage being set for the fulfillment of that prophecy, and I think it's soon.
Thanks, Elliot. Well, I'm thinking now of a very controversial, and that was a great question, Jason. Thanks very much. Again, thanks for your answer.
Thanks, Jason.
L.A., very much. L.A., there's a great deal of discussion over a controversial sighting over Jerusalem, or reportedly over Jerusalem, on January 28th, 2011. Some consider it a CGI. Many have just flat out said it's a CGI, it's a hoax. Mm-hmm. But even if it were to be a hoax, do you think that we will see future UFO events over Jerusalem?
The third book of the Nephilim trilogy, that's precisely what it used to look like when it was first published. Giant UFOs over the Temple Mount, absolutely. That's what we'll see. As far as Jerusalem UFO, we took that apart in our Watch, specifically the Watchers 2 DVD. We interviewed a gentleman who works with computers at a special effects studio in Hollywood. We showed him the footage of Jerusalem UFO, and at first he was absolutely entranced by what he saw until the image left. And then he just looked at me and said, "Oh, that's just done in post. It's called a stretch." And both my good friend and co-producer Richard Shaw and myself looked at each other and said, "What?" He goes, "Oh yeah, I could do that in 5 minutes. It's just, you put the object in, you do this, you do that, and it's a stretch." And so that's what we went with. However, we showed him footage that Dr. Roger Lear gave us, which we know, because we know Dr. Roger Lear, who's impeccable. The source is real. This is real footage. We knew that. And he said, "Well, this appears to be a hoax, too." And then we pulled the rug out from under him and said, "Well, my friend, it's not a hoax." The bottom line for me with the Jerusalem UFO, I would say, 65-35. 65% in my head that this thing was photoshopped, 35% that it was real.
It is very intriguing. I know it garnered a tremendous amount of attention on the web and the field itself. L.A., you also referenced in your book, I thought this was intriguing, your reference to one aspect of God as light. Do you believe that this shows an omnipotent potentiality as being able to go beyond as to rate of travel in the universe?
Well, it's interesting. I was reading something about the Hadron Collider, rather.
Yes, today. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and they were talking about there seems to be this ghost particle that gets in the way of the atom smashing, and I just started cracking up.
Right.
They're trying to smash these two protons together to create a mini Big Bang theory, and they're going 99.99999% of the speed of light. And just as they're about to do this, some ghost particle shows up and prevents them from colliding. It's like, what? What is that about? Once again, it's like they build this thing. I mean, just think about that. The billions of dollars or whatever build this thing, to try to find out, where we are. At some point in time, and I read this morning, there might be some sort of a synthesis between Einsteinian relativity and string theory and quantum physics where the two will overlap, and we'll see how they work together. We don't know. This other dimension where El Elyon resides, the Most High God, he can access all points in the space-time continuum simultaneously. So when he calls out the future, it's not the future to him, it's the present. When he's looking in the past 3,000 years ago, for what else would be 3,000 years ago, to him it's the present. Go figure. And that should just make everybody wing, because I know it does mine. But that's what he's able to do. And then he states that I alone am God, no one else but me here, thank you. I alone call out the beginning before the end and the end before the beginning. I alone can do it. And so far he's right. There's a lot of imposters out there that try to do it. I won't mention any names, but there are a lot of imposters. But, you look at the track record, it's 100% accuracy 100% of the time. And again, I'm not talking, and this is what I run into. People will say, "Oh, you're just so religious." I'm not religious at all. I'm not religious at all. Frankly, I'm a supernaturalist. I believe in the supernatural. I travel in the supernatural. My paradigm is one of the supernatural. But I know who it is that I serve, and I know who it is that has changed and that dwells within me, which is wonderful. Not some, demonic possession thing, exactly the opposite of that. So, that's the miracle that happened 2,000 years ago. That's the thing that stood the Western world completely on its head, that changed the Roman Empire. I mean, people just don't go to, stand in an arena and get torn apart by lions singing hymns. I mean, that stuff was true. They did it for a reason. Something was going on there. And that same something is happening today, but it's been obfuscated, unfortunately, by the very organization which seeks to promulgate it to the people. But it's real. I can tell you, after 31 years, it's extremely real. And it's not what most people think it is. It's not a set of rules. It's not a set of trying to be good, because you can't be, and I can't either. It's all about grace, is really what it is. Unmerited favor. That's what it's about. And it's wonderful. It's a wonderful way to live. It's opened my eyes to what is happening on the globe. We are headed towards this cosmic conflict, which is about to spill out over into this dimension, our dimension here. It will create the Great Deception. The Middle East is ready to erupt. The New World Order is about to take control. I believe that America will be attacked, more than likely with some sort of an EMP bomb, electromagnetic pulse weapon, which will put us back into the Stone Age. And by the way, when that happens, unless you have a Faraday cage around anything electrical, it will short out, it will fry, and it won't turn on ever again, your host. So if you don't know what a Faraday cage is, you can build it just using chicken wire. But, go on Google. But how many people are going to put Faraday cages around their car every night? It's not going to happen. Or on their cell phones or whatever. So I tell people, look, and let me get a sip of water here. We can see something is coming. I mean, with the earthquakes and the famines, the pestilence, the wars and the rumors of wars, we all can see that something is coming and it's good. Is it ascension or something else? All the 2012ers are talking about ascension. The Mayan crystal skulls were here, and we actually did work against them because we believe that we know who created them. Remember, when you talk about 2012 and you talk about the Mayan, just plug in the 70,000 ritualistic human sacrifices that were done. That's the dirty little secret that most people don't want to talk about. So this was a religion steeped in human sacrifice, steeped in the occult, literally steeped in the occult. I can make a strong case, and this will make me a lot of probably ruffle some feathers here. Please understand, I'm not pointing guilt at the second statement. I'm prefacing that. But the first statement is the Holocaust was a Luciferian ritualistic blood sacrifice which opened up the gateways, opened up the portals, which allowed the ancient ones to come through, which is why we see the Foo Fighters over Germany at the end of World War II. There's another Holocaust which is far greater than that. And I'll mention this, and when I say this, I get flack from people because it rattles their cages, and I understand that. First of all, there is nothing that human beings can do, pretty much, that can't be forgiven. All right? And add, if we're really honest with ourselves, a proclivity to become depraved human beings. The Holocaust is certainly an example of that. How is it that people can do the things that they did to one another during World War II? How is it that the Japanese the rape of Nanking? If you've never read about the rape of Nanking, just Google that and read the rape of Nanking. And it's just so barbaric, it's just insane, where people were treated as something less than human. Interestingly enough, the next one, there's 1 billion casualties worldwide. And of course, I'm speaking of the abortion Holocaust, because that's what it is. Now, when I call the abortion Holocaust a ritualistic, satanic blood sacrifice, I get a lot of flack for that. They're trying to say, you mean all the doctors are Satanists? No, that's not what I'm talking about at all. They don't know what they're doing. They're just performing something. But let me ask you this. If life begins at conception, and there's viable, the fetus is viable, where do we say that the fetus is no longer viable? Why is it that, and this is what turns that argument right on its head, why is it that we're so quick to understand that a condor's egg is viable, and that if you were to harm a condor's egg in the state of California, you'd be in prison for that, and yet you can slaughter the unborn? Now, I realize it's a very unpopular subject, and it's a hot-button issue, women's right to choose and all this other stuff. I get all that. But most people aren't aware of the supernatural repercussions of their actions and what they are doing. Again, there's forgiveness. For those of you who listen and feel tortured by my words, I'm saying that there's forgiveness, that even that can be forgiven. Everything can be forgiven. But we do things when we don't know what we do. We just do them. And all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, it's like, this is life here. And I'm destroying life. So, my admonition to people is, if you are pregnant, don't get an abortion. Put it up for adoption. Put it up for adoption, because there are millions of people that want children. And what's interesting about this is, with the abortion holocaust, it's turned the tide of the populations in Japan, Italy, Spain, all countries that have high abortion rates are no longer, the population is declining because they can no longer repopulate. So their cultures are dying off. I find that just absolutely astounding. And the only reason why the United States isn't that way, we've had 50 million of them here, 53 million and counting, is because of the influx of Hispanics, which do not have abortions. And so that is keeping us at a positive birth rate. It's fascinating stuff. But nonetheless, you see, when you go back to the Guidebook of the Supernatural, or you go back to the Book of Enoch, we find in the Book of Enoch the first abortion. And I'm not going to dwell on this for the next 20 minutes. I'll end it by saying this. And one of the fallen angels, get this now, right from the Book of Enoch, one of the fallen angels taught the women how to kill the embryo in the womb. That's the source. That's from the Book of Enoch, found on the Dead Sea Scrolls. I'm not making this stuff up. I'm not trying to be politically incorrect or ruffle feathers or freak anybody out. But this came from the fallen angels. And it's written in the Book of Enoch, and you can read it there for yourself.
I did read your segment of the book. I actually read it aloud to a fellow researcher. We had a discussion over it, and it is, your last comments here are eliciting some interesting comments in the room. But now, L.A., you do have a fine mind. I want to turn to the subject of Lazarus. The restoration of Lazarus after death and entombment in the crypt is a remarkable account in the Bible, and also as summarized in your book. You note that it's both a macro and micro move. Could you explain this?
Yes.
And also, great, go ahead.
Okay, fine. A micro move of the chess match is a move that affects one person. There are examples of that all throughout the book, and certainly all throughout the Guidebook of the Supernatural, where events happen that affect one person's life and changes that life. Then later on, because of that micro move, there is a macro implications. In other words, that one person's life can affect nations, peoples, races, all through history. It's amazing. So, in other words, like the book of Job is a micro move. The fall is to destroy Job. And this battle, and people go, why would the Most High, loving God want to do this? Well, Job is the guinea pig. Job gives us an insight into the supernatural war which is taking place even as we speak. And the same thing that happened to Job, the fallen one wants to do to all of us. Rob, kill, and destroy. That's what he wants to do. And so this tension exists between these two kingdoms. Unfortunately, it is the time of the fallen one, or it's getting closer. It's not quite yet, but it's very closer. And when that happens, everything really changes. At first, it seems for the better, but then eventually, all hell breaks loose on earth.
That does sound ominous. Now, L.A., this is not precisely on point here, but there is discussion Thank you. There is some discussion in UFO and ET research circles of efforts to transfer individual consciousness into another form, a husk or other receptacle. And here I'm thinking of one particular researcher who has referenced it in presentations. But not only she, ICAR too is doing great research on the full spectrum. But now on this question of accounts or rumors of attempts to transfer consciousness of an individual into another receptacle. Have you heard of? Do you see it as a replacement of in a sense of a life aspect?
Well, there are certainly cases of it. One of the most glaring ones is the movie Avatar, where at the end, that's exactly what he does. He moves his consciousness from a human receptacle into that of an avatar, into that of the other race of beings on the planet. He's able to do that. And, of course, it's all very shamanistic, and they're all sitting, and waving their hands, and the priestess gets up in the sacred tree and all this. I mean, it's great. It's great theater. It's a great story, but it doesn't have any rootings or underpinnings in what we would call the supernatural. What we do see from that, there are, for instance, Madame Blavatsky is a perfect example of this. I write about her in the book. She did something which was called automatic writing. All right, automatic writing is when a person goes into a trance. Another spirit being comes into their body, takes over their hand, and they begin to write volumes and volumes and pages after page. This Madame Blavatsky did, well over 100 years ago now. We are told in the Guidebook of the Supernatural that this is precisely forbidden. Why? Because you're letting an entity into you which is not supposed to be there. I believe that we are not, that these receptacles that we are in now, the flesh that we are housed in, are not our true state. It's not who we are. It's just, in other words, what is spirit really? Where does the spirit reside? It doesn't reside in the brain. There is no observer in the brain. We know that. There's no place where you can go and say that this is where the spirit of a man or woman is. I find it interesting that in the Genesis account, when Cain kills his brother Abel, God says, "I heard Abel's blood cry to me from the ground." Is that metaphor, or is it something more? Do we get a hint of where the spirit of a man or woman resides? What if it resides actually in the blood? What if the circulatory system, that as long as the blood moves, right, as long as the blood pumps, as long as the blood moves, the spirit can interface with that? Why are we told in the Levitical law not to eat the blood? Why is it that ghosts inhabit places where there's been murder and the shedding blood? It gets, the blood thing is bizarre. Why is it in ritualistic sex magic that blood is used? Why is it that Aleister Crowley and Satanists today use blood worship? Right? Why is it that the Mayans practice, the killing of cutting out the heart? I mean, if that's not ritualistic, I don't know what is. Right? All blood sacrifices, because blood, there's life in the blood, and the spirit resides in the blood. And this is where the transference of spirits can happen. This is where an entity can manifest, because there's been blood on the ground. The Civil War soldiers that are seen in pictures are nothing but demonic entities manifesting and mimicking the souls of the place where that person departed, and they do it over and over and over again, because it's the way that they can manifest in this dimension. Demons are not fallen angels. Fallen angels are fallen angels. Demons, in my opinion, are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim. Demons must inhabit something, possess something, in order to manifest in this dimension. And we see that all the time. Not all the time, but we see it, far too regularly. And then we have to deal with it on some level.
Well, that is very intriguing. Now, L.A., there also is much in your book as to the fact that true prophecy must be 100% accurate in its prophetic statements. Do you find that you had some interesting comments as to current prophecy regarding 2012 and other aspects of our soon future that you find don't reflect 100% accuracy, and you also reference a second heaven as a source. Could you give more details on this?
I believe the Mayan prophecy, the 2012 calendar, has already done what it's supposed to do. It's a red herring. It's already muckied the waters, obfuscated the dialogue, steered the dialogue into the direction of 2012. Well, I think it's a non-event. I don't think anything's going to happen. The place to watch is Israel. All the prophecy in the Guidebook of the Supernatural hinges around the state of Israel. Israel is now regathered from the four corners of the earth. That fulfills Ezekiel 37, is reestablished in their ancient boundaries, which is what we see now. That's never happened before in the thousands of years in history. That nation was destroyed in AD 70. It was scattered under the four corners of the earth. And yet the people somehow managed to stay together. Out of the ashes of the Holocaust, had Hitler been won World War II, there'd be not one Jew left on the planet. Ezekiel 37 would have been proved never to have happened. Most High God's a liar. Checkmate. There we go. But that's not what happened. Out of the ashes of the Holocaust, Israel was regathered from the four corners of the earth, reestablished back into its ancient boundaries, thus fulfilling the prophecy of Ezekiel 37. Absolutely astounding. Absolutely astounding. There's other prophecies that tell us that the third temple will be rebuilt. People argue that it will become self-evident. We can argue till the cows come home. The bottom line is, at some point in time, that deal is going to be cut. We will see the temple rebuilt. And now what are you going to say? Remember, I'm telling you all this stuff a priori, before it's happened. There's no temple there right now, on that Temple Mount. And by the looks of it, any sane person would say there's no way the Muslims will ever allow the Jews to build a temple on that Temple Mount. And I would agree. But we're not talking about normal. We're talking about the supernatural. Who of us in the chat room, anyone listening, would have imagined a year ago the Arab Spring? Who of us would have ever postulated that millions of people would simultaneously revolt all throughout the Middle East and call for the deposing of their leaders? Who would have ever imagined such a thing? None of us. No one saw it coming. Absolutely no one that I ever talked to saw it coming, and yet it was triggered almost simultaneously after the initial eruption in Tunisia. Bam! All hell broke loose. I believe that there is a supernatural component to the Arab Spring. That being established, that being stated, the third temple will be rebuilt. Ezekiel 38:39 will come to pass. Damascus will be destroyed. The Antichrist will rise into power. It's happening. The stage is being set. We are rapidly moving towards the fulfillment of these ancient prophetic texts.
Well, it's true as well, and I believe one of your blogs references this, that there is tremendous discussion about the building of the third temple. You have such well-meaning groups as the Temple Mount Faithful,
Sure.
who are trying to enable the construction of the third temple. I hadn't realized that there are 200 acres at that site on which that third temple could be built.
I'm not sure about 200 acres, but the Temple Mount itself is 40 acres. The Temple Mount itself is actually a 40-acre complex, and the Dome of the Rock only takes a certain portion of it. There's a huge tract which is just sitting there. The prophecy, as I understand it, there'll be a wall erected between the Dome of the Rock and the new temple. The Jews have already cut the stones out for them. They've made many of the temple implements. They're ready to go. The guy who cuts the deal for the Israelis to build that temple is none other than the Antichrist.
Boy, that's intriguing. And that's a rather trite point here. So it's not 200 acres. Would it be more in the range of 20 acres or less there, on which they could build a very impressive site?
Yeah, that's plenty of room. 20 acres is huge. 5 acres is huge, you know?
But you know, it's interesting, too, when you discuss biblical or even biblical concepts, the synchronicity factor or that aspect of a personal or even a culture's path being formed. For example, when you mentioned the Roman general Titus's destruction of Jerusalem in 70 A.D., he later became the Roman emperor. I don't know, I see some synchronicity with that. I don't know. Of course, although the Roman civilization was certainly a fine one in many respects, but it is interesting that it was also he received an award for that. And it's a horrible thought because, of course, the Israeli people and culture have given us many fine accomplishments over the eons.
And continue to do so.
Yep, I agree with you. And, you know, this is offside here. And it's not. I'm not trying to be here just sort of a pacifier. But when you think about the adjective demonic, anyone would consider what happened in the Holocaust or Shoah as reflecting a demonic aspect, something just really, really horrible.
Yes.
And I think we can all agree with that concept. Now, we've got another question from our researcher, Mark, in the room. Of course, Mark has a great site, Unusual Historic Places, and I thought I had the site right here with me so that other people can refer to it too, and I'll have lost it. Well, anyway, Mark's question is your opinion of the Shroud of Turin.
That's my favorite subject, next to UFOs. Well, maybe even slightly above UFOs. We actually did a whole sequence in Watchers 3, which we call Fingerprints of the Supernatural. How interesting is that? And we closed that Watchers 3 with a segment on the Shroud of Turin. We interviewed the Right Honorable Barry Schwartz, who was knighted in Spain for his work on the Shroud of Turin, and we interviewed Dame Isabel Picsik, who brings extremely interesting perspective to the Shroud. She's both a particle physicist and a world-class muralist. We asked her, is this a painting? I know the answer to that. Of course it's not a painting. But she goes into this whole elaborate explanation of why it's not a painting. How paint is just particles suspended in a liquid, and the Shroud shows no liquid. It's an unbroken one-piece painting, and there's no painting exists like it anywhere. It's not a painting. There are no brush strokes. There is no directionality on the Shroud. The Shroud is a piece of linen roughly 13 feet long by about 4 feet wide, and on it is the imprint of a crucified man, hence the man on the Shroud. The forensic detail of the Shroud was lost to us until the advent of for us in the digital age, we forget negatives and positives, but back when Secundo Pia first photographed the Shroud, he created a negative. In other words, you took your picture, you put the glass plate in, shot the negative, and you go to a dark room and develop the negative, and from the negative you create a positive. To his absolutely astonishment, when he began to develop that first shot, what he saw was an image on the negative. Get that? A positive image on the negative, which means the Shroud is a negative image. Now, how can a medieval forger, in the 14th century or the 12th century, whatever, decide that somehow leap in a time machine and know and understand all the forensic detail that are in the Shroud, and to understand that eventually 500, 600, 700 years from the time when he's alive, he'll have invented photography. So the negative image that he's putting on will actually become the positive image. I mean, of course, that's an impossibility. Dame Picsik believes, as I do, that physics, which we know nothing about, was responsible for creating the image on the Shroud. The scourging was extremely brutal. Extremely brutal. There were over 120 scourge marks on the body. There is a flow of blood and water consistent with piercing the pericardium of the heart. When you do the forensics on the Shroud, it's just mind-numbing how accurate it is. No medieval artist even had any idea of these things. Only in the modern era, with our forensic or ability to test the limits, shall I say, of forensics, how we've been able to look at the Shroud and really understand what's going on there. The crown of thorns was not a crown, it was more like a helmet of thorns. The beard was bifurcated. It was like ripped out of his face in some places. Again, there's a bruise in the nose, over the left eye, the knee. Everything that's there forensically is in complete tune with the gospel accounts. Whoever or whatever created this image on the Shroud, it is not a painting. There is another artifact that is found in Spain. Now, the face cloth of Oviedo, or the Sudarium of Oviedo. Oviedo is the city in Spain. The Sudarium means face cloth, and Sudarium as in death. So the Sudarium of Oviedo, the face cloth of Oviedo, when you examine that, we know, first of all, that it's been there since AD 700. It's been in Oviedo, Spain for 1,300 years. No one disputes that. When you take that cloth superimpose the image on the shroud, take that cloth and put it over the shroud, right, over the head of the shroud, you will find over 50 points of congruency. Over 50 points of congruency. The blood type is the same. When they took that body down off the cross for respect for the dead in pretty much all cultures around the world, they took this head cloth and wrapped the head with it. Hence the blood stains. The face cloth and the shroud were on the same person at one point in time. Most scientists believe that. As far as the carbon dating, which some of the skeptics out there in the audience are saying, I thought it was carbon dated and proved that it was a medieval forgery. Let me say this, that while we have no conclusive proof in this, in Washington Street, when we interviewed the Right Honorable Barry Schwartz, who was knighted for his work, he talks about a group of men and scientists. There were protocols that were set in place before these gentlemen went in to do the science for the carbon dating. They were supposed to take 3 different samples from 3 parts of the shroud. Instead, they took 1. And only because this group of men came in at the last minute, kicked everybody out of the room, conferred with a bunch of people, and they brought the scientists back to the room and said, you will take the 1 sample from this corner of the shroud, which they proceeded to do. Well, lo and behold, it comes back medieval forgery, or not medieval forgery, but that the shroud was not 2,000 years old. The shroud was only, very, very new, 14th century, blah, blah, blah. Independently of the research was this husband and wife team, and they looked at all the other evidence and they said, something's fishy here, something's not right. And they did more research and they found out that the shroud was almost destroyed in the 15th century fire, and that the poor sisters of Clare did the patchwork to the shroud by producing end-to-end splices within the shroud. So they sewed it back. They took cotton fibers, dyed them to match the linen, and then spliced within the shroud. Well, the guy who was on the original STIRP team, who studied the fibers of the shroud, STIRP is Shroud of Turin Research Project, said, well, I can debunk this in 20 minutes. Went to his laboratory, took a sample he had from the shroud, and to his absolute, utter amazement, there he found, precisely as these 2 amateur scientists postulated, end-to-end splices within the shroud. He then wrote a peer-reviewed paper, which I believe was published shortly before his death in 2005, indicating that, to his best of his knowledge, this completely skewed the carbon dating. So we can't go by that. What's interesting is, and Barry Schwartz gets into this in Watchers Street, is that the laboratory at Oxford University that debunked the shroud received an anonymous gift of £1.2 million for debunking the shroud. And Schwartz raises the questions, did they know this before they went in? If they didn't know it, then no foul, no harm. But if they did know that this was being offered £1 million to debunk the shroud, how then may have it skewed the result? And of course we know it does. What's even more of a travesty, and most people don't know about this, is there was a supposed restoration of the shroud, which is an absolute abomination. It's an atrocity what happened. This woman went in and vacuumed the shroud, and then steam cleaned it, thereby wiping out any and all remaining forensic evidence the shroud may have yielded for future scientists. So you want to talk about deliberately trying to obfuscate the evidence, destroy the evidence? In my opinion, with all due respect, that's deliberate. That is absolutely deliberate. You don't treat a piece of forensic evidence that way. All the pollen, all the blood, everything's gone. It's all gone. The image is now 7 centimeters longer than it was originally.
Boy, those are very intriguing comments, and of course what a truly remarkable artifact, one that does demand research and consideration as well. A question from Mark, and I have here the name of his site. It's Unusual Historic Places. He thanks you for that explanation, and Mark's website is at marksancientsites.webs.com. Well, I want to thank you for just 2 hours of very thought-provoking discussion, L.A. Now, we have about 2 minutes left. What has been the response you received from the Cosmic Chess Match? A lot of material there for thought. And what would your comments be for the people here as we approach January 2012?
Well, I think 2012 is a red herring. I state this in the Cosmic Chess Match. I've had people write me and tell me how it's completely opened their eyes to the war that we're in. It makes sense. When you read the book, it makes sense, and it lays it out step by step, precept by precept, line by line, and it will open your eyes to this cosmic war that we're in. 2012 is a no-show. 2012, in fact, has already served its purpose. More people know about 2012 than they do about Ezekiel 38, 39. And that's what's coming. Ezekiel 38, Isaiah 17, Damascus, that's what's coming on the horizon. 2012 is a red herring. In fact, in the Jewish calendar, 2012 is we're already in 2012.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point. Now, let's see. Quick question here to Joe Montaldo, the UPRN network owner and director. Do we have, Joe, 7 more minutes? I thought we just had 1 minute left. Just write this into me. 1 minute left. Okay. I'd like to have, you mentioned L.A. To us, any episodes at which you'll be speaking or any upcoming book or further Watcher 4 DVD developments.
Well, Watchers 3 is about to, it's starting to ship right now. Watchers 3 is shipping. Mm-hmm. And we just got those actually today, so we're shipping that out. That's called Fingerprints of the Supernatural. It's about 70 minutes long, 70 minutes long, an hour and 10 minutes long. It's packed full with riveting interviews and information, which I think you'll find interesting. We discussed the Torah codes. We discussed the Shroud of Turin. We discussed the anomalies in the sun. We talk about the Inuit Indians. We talk about the Hopi Indians and the prophecies with the Hopi. Of course, Dr. Roger Lear gives us another update on the implants. And if you're interested in getting the Watcher series, you can go to my website, lamarzulli.net, lamarzulli, M-A-R-Z as in zebra, U-L-L-I, lamarzulli.net, and you can apprise yourself of those, I believe, vital information. Get the whole series, because the first one is UFOs are real, burgeoning, and not going away. The second one is called Signs in the Heavens and Earth, and the third one is called Fingerprints of the Supernatural. So I think you'll find it interesting. lamarzulli.net.
Thank you, thank you very much, L.A., for that information and also for a very intriguing discussion.
Oh, I appreciate it, Therese. Really do.
Hope you'll be a soon return guest. And
anytime, Mom. There's so much to talk about. So much is going on, and I just a shout out to all your people that are listening. Thank you so much, and just wish everybody a very peaceful New Year, hopefully.
Well, thank you. That's a great wish, and we appreciate everyone in the room and on the network listening this evening. We both wish you a great weekend and wonderful New Year to you and your family as well, L.A. And good night, everyone.
Therese. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Nuclear, but it's not a reactor. They're plutonium batteries.